Join us for a deep and vulnerable conversation about values and how working with values transforms how we see the world. We are three conflict embracers with a collective 25 plus years experience in mediation and conflict resolution. Through conflict resolution, self-inquiry, and practical spirituality, we help bring clarity to the chaos of life. We'll address in this podcast why we can sometimes feel so indecisive, disconnected, and confused about our purpose.
I'm Corrine Lawrence, a chartered mediator in Southern Alberta, Canada.
I'm Ali Ansell, a qualified mediator in British Columbia, Canada.
And I'm Christina Morris, a mediator in training in Northeast Alberta, Canada.
Welcome, everyone. Today we're going to do something slightly different than we tend to do on these podcast episodes. Corrine found a cool clip from a person talking about values. And so we're going to name the thing that they talked about that's values related. And then we're going to add our own thoughts and experience and perspective about how values play into the thing that they brought up. So let's get into it and start by talking about what is that thing. There will be a link in the show notes to the thing that we're referencing. So a woman, Dr. Becky Kennedy, who is the founder and CEO of Good Inside, which is a parenting movement. I'm reading from her little blurb thing here. It's a parenting movement that disrupts conventional parenting practices by empowering parents to become sturdy, confident leaders and raise sturdy, confident kids. Now, we're not going to talk from a kid or parent-focused perspective. That's just sort of her background. So she was on Tim Ferriss's podcast, and she talks about how guilt, the feeling of guilt, is something that can be confused with other things at different points. And she gives these great examples. And definitely check out the link and probably listen to the podcast, because it seems like she's got some cool stuff to say, and she's doing some important things in the world. She talks about how, let's say if we are driving and we yell at a taxi and we feel guilt about that. Let's say it's a valid guilt because we feel bad for yelling, and yelling is not something that is in line with our values, is what she says. But a different situation, like our in-laws want to come over and we say no because we want some alone time. We feel guilty for that. And what she says is that decision is in line with our values. So why do we feel guilty? She's saying we feel guilty because we're taking on the emotions of others and calling it guilt. So we think what we feel is guilt, but actually we're feeling the thing and we're trying to manage and metabolize the feelings of the other person for them because we were taught to do that in childhood. And what an interesting idea. And she says values so many times, we had to talk about it. So, what other context would be worth pointing out, Corrine, before we start to add our perspective on this?
No, I think it's a good time to just talk about where this fits in the VBL framework and what we would add to that. So yes, and.
Perfect. Okay. Do you want to start us off? What are your thoughts on how this relates or is slightly different from, or what are the things that come up for you when it comes to our VBL perspective?
Yeah, and this is a great and interesting example and really accurate. And from a values-based living perspective, we would also add that there is a further level of guilt due to conforming or living to other people's values that causes internal conflict. So sort of moving out of alignment or struggling with that internal conflict, wanting to move out of alignment to please the in-laws' need for connection or to have access to their grandkids. And the way that also creates this discord. And I think that's what this guilt is sort of pointing at, is um, a kind of discord. And Brene Brown would call that, like, guilt is I did a bad thing, right? And so there's this internal uncomfortable feeling of like I did something wrong, or holding up that I yelled at that person, and that's not who I want to be, because like being kind is in line with my values, and I really stepped outside of my values there. Um, but also we could have a value around like they really messed up. They jammed up my efficiency because they took the wrong route, or like all of these things coming into play. But we hold ourselves to a high standard when we're, especially when we're in this like world of trying to live in alignment, trying to be a better person. And even that self-judgment, self-incrimination piece can be out of our values as well. So for me, where I've got a high value of non-judgment for myself, when I judge myself for being out of alignment, I'm also out of alignment because I judge myself really harshly. And that doesn't feel right either. And again, I feel like I did something wrong. And then when we uphold a value of self-care, and we purposely frustrate even our own connection value, or we know that we're frustrating that in-laws value, can create discord and a feeling of I did something wrong. And it's a really uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah, and we talked just kind of before hitting record around this feeling of I did something wrong, and and connecting it back to values continues to seem to work every time throughout the years that we've been doing this. And I think it does again because there's this weird thing that can happen when we exist in a society where we start to believe that something is important to us, that a value is tippy top on our list, but actually it's not important to us. It might be important to the society we're living in, or it might be important to our parents, or it might be important to our community. And we take it on as if it's our own, but then there's a dissonance. And we're living our lives. And even if we start going through the awareness process, what are my top values? It might make it onto our top 5 values list. And we might say, in my case, belonging is really important to me. It's in my top 5. And who knows, maybe it is, but there might also be something going on there where we've actually been told that it's must be super important, and it must be so important that it is more important than other things like health, or like solitude. If we're thinking of an example where the in-laws want to come visit and we want to say yes to them um, because we know it's what they want. But if we were in a totally aligned place with our true intrinsic values, we would just say, I know that's what you want, but it's not what I want. So I'm going to say no and pass and know that you're going to be okay. But that's not what we're doing in this case. We're thinking, man, I want you to have that so bad that I'm considering sacrificing some really important stuff here, maybe health, maybe solitude, maybe other things, to satisfy my value of, and this is the thing that we were talking about beforehand, Kareen. What is it that we're satisfying? Maybe it's satisfying connection, maybe it's satisfying harmony, and maybe that is even connected to something deeper, like satisfying my value of safety in this relationship. If I say no to you, maybe my role in this relationship is in jeopardy. And I don't want that. That seems super high risk, way more high risk. It's probably worth just doing this hangout with you today so that safety stays solid. Whether this is true or not is almost besides the point at this juncture, because internally we really believe that. So the, this is why this piece of that Dr. Kennedy brings up is really cool, because she's saying we're taking on the feelings of the person that we're interacting with. And this VBL lens is sort of also, or or instead of, I'm not sure, saying that we're taking on values as well that are not ours and trying to fit them into places they don't actually belong, because we are perfectly we have a really good sense of, if we go deep down, what our truest values are. And if we're trying to jam other ones in there that don't actually belong, there's gonna be a dissonance there.
And I think I agree with you. I think it's a yes and like, yeah, we are trying to and taking on that, trying to not let other people feel something is a form of manipulation, where you're trying to control the situation of, if I never let them be uncomfortable, we never have to be challenging our relationship or something. There's something that's not on the level. And it's also something that's totally normal, totally understandable. It's not something to be, demonized, but it's part of this conditioned behavior of, we need to prioritize other people. We know we're doing something right if we're prioritizing other people's needs, values over our own. Um, and knowing there's also an ideal world where we could just be honest and negotiate with each other and be like, I don't want to. And somebody else meets you right there and says, that's cool. I would like to, but if you have a strong feeling like you don't, can we figure out another time? Right? Like that is the ideal situation. And I think that's where VBL is trying to move us into, to be able to, but we have to get real with ourselves. We have to know ourselves first before we can enter into that space with integrity, as opposed to entering into it from a, wanting to control a situation through manipulation, or trying to, conform to the pretend rules that are out there. So I think this is the first step, is really getting to know yourself and being comfortable with, why does this matter so much? And what am I really afraid of by saying no? And this is really questioning that conditioning. One, just celebrate that you're aware of the conditioning. God damn, that's great. Celebrate. That's a big deal. Then two, where did this conditioning come from? We can spend a little bit of time, but don't lurk there. It's just there. But what am I really afraid of if I say no? What is that fear? And this is exactly what you were talking about, Allie, of like, is this, am I worried that they'll walk away from me? Am I worried that they'll not want to be with me? And this goes deeper than like, I don't want to say no. Yeah, but why? And then why are you afraid of that? And so what is why is that important? Until you go down, like we call it, the five deep kind of questions, to come out with like, I'm really scared that they'll think I'm not a good person, or I'm scared that I'll be seen as imperfect, or whatever your deepest fear, core wound is, particularly in an in-law space with that maternal uh, archetype. What are we so scared of? And then we can have some deep exploration. You don't have to reveal that to the other person, but having that depth of conversation through the values lens that can help step you in and then help step you back out and say, now I have new information because I value, um, being seen as perfect or whatever it is, or because I value not being abandoned. And that's connected to my value of worthiness, belonging. Um, I'm going to make a healthy choice to satisfy that, or I'm going to choose to frustrate it over prioritizing these other values that I'm going to support, but I'm doing it with my eyes open. And so I'm not accidentally frustrating my need to be accepted, because that's where that guilt can come from, because I chose self care over my need to be accepted, which is different from connection. It's deeper. Then I can have my eyes open and say, I accept the consequences internally, and I accept the consequences of that other person may give me. But I am, because I'm aware, I'm much more prepared for either consequence. I've got my eyes open. And that's a really profound experience.
And this is actually really like high level stuff, meaning like high skill level stuff. A simple example, like we get a knock on the door. It's a friend of ours. Hey, I just wanted to pop in and say hi and see if you wanted to have a coffee. Um, Never mind, people don't really pop on
First
each
of all,
other's
what kind
doors
of
anymore.
monster does that?
Like instantly, I'm freaked out.
Red alert.
But say that happened. Okay, all right, let's say they send a text to make it more relevant and maybe easier and less threat because we're just texting back. We're not having to say something on the fly. So they text and say, "Hey, what are you up to? I thought I'd pop over for a tea or coffee." And maybe we're at the point where we have this awareness of our response to that text. And we're not only are we saying, not only are we experiencing panic, maybe, or tightening discomfort, we're having thoughts that are, oh, that is the last thing I want to do right now. Let's say I love them, and this is the last thing I want to do right now. Not only are we experiencing these things, we're also aware and watching ourselves experience those things on the fly. That's a high skill thing to be able to do on its own, is to realize, okay, I am thinking these thoughts. I am feeling these feelings in my body is experiencing these things. Okay. Then from there going, well, I'm going to judge that my reaction is actually like quite big. Um, it's maybe bigger than like my normal reaction because maybe in this case it is like I'm feeling panicky at the idea of this person coming by and I'm feeling really uncomfortable at the idea of saying no to them. Like that just feels like something it feels really impossible to do. Okay. Now I'm realizing I'm having a big reaction to this. Okay. And then going towards it instead of avoiding it, that's a whole other like high skill level thing to do. Getting curious about that, moving forward instead of trying to minimize the discomfort. So then say we do that bit. Then it's going based on my previous work on myself. I know that sometimes I can associate saying no to someone as a decision that can feel like my value of safety or worthiness or belonging is in jeopardy. Whether it is or it isn't, it just feels like it is sometimes. So it feels like by saying no, I am potentially frustrating my value of belonging, acceptance, worthiness, whatever it is. Oh my gosh, that's already so many steps. And this person, you're just staring at this text like, oh my God, what do I do? Never mind how we actually respond to them, right? That's like so much less important.
All this is going on, and you text back, okay, or a thumbs up emoji.
Yeah, thumbs up emoji. So charged, that thumbs up. And then from there, having the radical acceptance to say, okay, this is what I'm experiencing right now. There's no wrong answer. The world is my playground. Whatever I choose here is just an opportunity for me to learn more about myself. So I could say, sure, come on over and then see what my reaction is, see how the hangout goes. I learn more things. I could say, um, I could lie and say, I'm busy doing something else right now. I'm so sorry we can't hang out, maybe another time. And that frustrates maybe some other values, but I protect my very, very important value that I have, which is maybe mine or maybe not mine around um, harmony and belonging and what I feel like that means about my worthiness. Um, I could also if it's safe to do so, I could fill them in and say, like, it's so crazy. Like, you're just asking to hang out, but I'm realizing I'm like telling myself all of these things about um, what it might mean if I say no. But to be totally honest, I'm just feeling maxed out today. And if we hung out, I wouldn't have a lot. I wouldn't have a lot to give, and I think I might actually run out of steam before I can get the rest of my day done, like I kind of have planned after we would hang out. And so I just want you to be aware of my inner, story that I have going on here. Um, and maybe go from there and maybe you co-create something or maybe you follow up with and so I'm gonna pass this time and I want you to know I love and appreciate you and I love hanging out with you and like sort of doing that ending with that um I'm going to establish safety for myself around this relationship. Maybe they would give it. Like a lot of people are lovely and they say like, no problem. I don't like you were saying, Kareen. Let's work on another time. I love hanging out with you when you are like excited to hang out too. And so let's do that. And you might get that from them, but you can also do it for yourself by saying, I love hanging out with you and I love that you reach out to me. And when the time is right, I'm really looking forward to doing that and hoping that they mirror the same. But oh my gosh, it took so many steps to get there, which is why that radical acceptance piece is so huge and why I think it's really cool that we get to talk about this because Dr. Kennedy talks about the emotion, the shame piece, and we're saying the shame piece is a breadcrumb to all this deep work that is going on with this little symptom of guilt that's showing a bunch more stuff, right?
Absolutely. We definitely know that the thoughts that we think, the things that we feel, the emotions we feel, and the actions, decisions that we take and make, these are all breadcrumbs back to values, to understanding what is motivating us deep inside. I absolutely agree. And I think, like, just to say another beautiful thing, like in this process, is if we have done some preparation, like you said, the radical acceptance piece is really important, but the preparation of knowing what my values are so I get to A to B to C to D faster. And knowing, like, for example, I want connection. I want people to knock on my door, and I also and that would satisfy my cravings for connection and all of that stuff. And here are the reasons that I immediately say no, and they're both equally true. And I get to choose which one of these I'm gonna, for today, for this offer, for my life circumstances in this, 12-hour cycle that I'm awake. What am I gonna choose? But I can't do that if I don't have them. And that starts with like the values quiz where you've got your top 5 on the ready. So it's really difficult in a highly charged situation where you're having an emotional reaction or meltdown, whatever, to logically think through, like, what do I want? When we're in panic mode. So if we have these already documented, we've already thought through, we've had other experiences that we've tracked our emotions to. So which of those values are getting triggered when we have a process ready, we've practiced it, we've worked with it before, is super helpful. And then we get a more practiced or a place to go. It's already on your phone. You're already looking at that text on your phone. It's really convenient. And then this long-term relationship that you're building with yourself through your values. I know that when I have an emotion like this, it's often connected to these values. So I have that known memory, that known recollection, super important. We get there a lot faster. And to be able to say, like what I was describing, is like utopic experience that we could have with other people, we have to have that. I don't even know why currency is coming to mind, but I have that experience and practice on the ready so that we can go into these negotiations, these mini negotiations with not threat level like words or responses, that we walk into these negotiations safely, competently, and are able to de-escalate our response, be able to communicate clearly with empathy for ourselves, like sort of assertiveness for what we want, and also hold space and curiosity for what they want, knowing that connecting is something we both like we're both friends, we both like hanging out. Um, and this is the way to do it.
Yes. Oh, okay. I just want to add an example to this um, around competence for me. I forgot somehow until this conversation that competence is a big shadowy value for me, meaning it I have this story that it's really, really important to me to be competent, even though if I were in a totally safe environment, I would be able to let that go, and I have been able to let that go. So it's not my value. It was given to me, and I'm working on it. And it's really connected to worthiness. When I'm seen as competent, I feel worthy. And so I need to remind myself that I am worthy and loved regardless of how well I'm doing that day at any given thing. That's really key for me. Um, and I think this shows up for me in a way that is relevant because it doesn't always show up as guilt. Sometimes it shows up as anger, which is my breadcrumb. If someone is interacting with me in a certain way, let's say giving unsolicited advice about something that I feel like I am very competent in, I'll have this like anger response, which I really need to manage because it can leak into my behavior and make me a little more short with them and a little more like haughty and like I need to prove to them not only that I'm competent, but like, how could you possibly think that you know more about this situation in my life than I do? It is my life. Brr. Like that's the sort of attitude comes out. Um, and but it's related, I think, because it's a breadcrumb that's telling me that one of my shadowy values is at play, in this case, competence. And it's an opportunity for me to take a step back and be like, okay, I'm noticing I'm having an internal reaction here. Okay, it looks like it's probably competence. Got it. All right. Whether or not I fill this other person in on that, just realizing it's not actually what the other person is doing. And that's the other aspect of this that I wanted to bring is I think some of my friends who have just such skills when it comes to communication can still get slipped up when other people are behaving quote unquote badly. They're breaking the rules. They're rude. Maybe they say something in a rude way or they don't do it the way I would do it. We suddenly feel like we have permission to um, let go of good behavior. Like they showed us bad behavior, we get to show them bad behavior back. We get to show them what it feels like to like at that tit for tat thing, what it feels like to experience that bad thing, like as if somehow that will humble them and it'll de-escalate the situation. And even when we tell stories, and then they said this, and you know what I said to them? I said da 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 da, and they didn't say a word back. And the unspoken thing is, so in their mind, they knew they were wrong and they changed their lives forever, like because of like the retort that I had, right? Usually that's not the case. Usually that person goes to their friend and talks about the rude person that they interacted with, and you're the rude person in their mind, and they're the rude person in your mind, and there you go. But this thing about like the ultimate accountability, even when the person is showing bad behavior, even when the in-law pops in and wants to hang out, but does it in a rude way, does it in a passive aggressive way, tries to make you feel bad. I haven't seen the kids in a long time because you don't seem to want to hang out and you keep having excuses instead of hanging out with me. So I thought I would just pop by because that seems to be the only way I can see my grandkids. Then I'm not feeling guilty. I'm feeling pissed. And I'm saying no, but I'm not feeling guilty. So the guilt is not the breadcrumb, the anger is the breadcrumb. But it's not about the guilt or the anger, really, right? It's about the values that are getting frustrated, that are driving these breadcrumbs, whether it's the feeling or the thought or the behavior. And those, I think, are the things to drive into. Sure, using the guilt as a signal, but it's one of many, and driving down to those values and having them very accessible, like you're saying, Kareen. Knowing our values, we cannot say it enough. The Know Your Values course is called that for a reason, and is a reason why, even though it's the foundational first course, we just come back to it and back to it and back to it, because that's a place where we slip up. We get distracted by the fact that we're feeling a big emotion. We get distracted by if you only knew the thing that they said to me, you would understand why I did the thing that I did. We get distracted by that. And coming back to our values is really, really, really difficult and actually boring. It's way less interesting than talking about the terrible thing that they said and the great witty remark that I had to say back. But it's where the transformation is. Like it's where the change is. It's where being able to let go of the charge is. It's being able to remove the projection. It's being able to take accountability. It's being able to find the radical acceptance. It's the key. And so, like, we can go ahead and vent and do the ranting if we need to rant and journal a million pages about anything that we need to do, but to get when we're ready to get back to the values bit, because that's where the movement is going to happen, and the deepening of getting to know ourselves is going to happen. And I really resonate with that one because my values, my shadowy values like competence, getting frustrated, can elicit a variety of different emotions. Anger, guilt for sure, but also sadness and hopelessness and all of these different, like a myriad of emotions. And it matters less what they are and more what they're pointing to, I think.
I totally agree. And what a great relatable example. I really appreciate that.
Mm.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
I think we've like woven in a lot of this throughout, but is there anything you would say, Kareen, for someone who is kind of agreeing with this conceptually and going, yes, that is something that I want to do. I'm on board. What do I do with this now?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I assume if they are, that they've and have found us possibly through the values quiz, but and it's figuring out those top values, not necessarily five, but could be six or eight or 10 or 12 of your top values, and just getting to know like we do a lot of good examples in the Know Your Values workshop of like getting to know what your values that are when you satisfy your top values, what do they look like? And then when those same values are being frustrated, what do they look like? And it's again the same, like it sounds so boring, but it's driving to recognize what they look like in you. So how do they look when they're satisfied? How do they look when they're frustrated? How do they look when you're negotiating or trying to trade one over the other? And that's all an experience of getting to know yourself through the values lens. Gives you an automatic deep experience, and it's accessing to the unconscious motivators. So we're it's not just the superficial of like emotions are great, the thoughts are great, the decisions that you make, the actions you take are great, but as you pointed out, Ali, they're breadcrumbs into what is really going on. And this is not just I think it's this and a little bit of this, but using values as your tools is really going into your unconscious. Where did this come from? What is this really about? What are the risks? What are the stories? Even they're connected to all these like unconscious pieces. And through the lens of values, we're bringing them up into awareness. And that's the profoundness of the experience. So really the Know Your Values quiz know your values workshop. And then when you're moving them out into like, now I want to talk about my values. I want to have a negotiation with somebody, the assertive communication, the values assertiveness course. And then how do I make decisions? Like taking these workshops that are very, very practical, step you through it. And then always kind of bringing it back to like, now what do you know about yourself? It's not just the decision. Yay, great, you made a decision. Yay, it's great. It's anchored in values. But also, what did you learn about yourself that is going to help you make the next decision faster or go a little bit deeper? Or where are you making decisions that satisfy these and frustrating those? So, how do you make decisions to satisfy those frustrated values so you have some even keel about yourself? Always with the intention. It's not about the decision, it's about getting to know yourself, getting to know, like, and trust yourself, and create that like certainty that leads to self-esteem, that leads to higher outcomes, higher self-awareness. It's beautiful.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
And if you want to hear some specific examples of this in action, because between the three of us, Corrine, Christine, and I have many examples of either wanting to or actually doing it, where we lean into this people pleasing, if you want to call it, tendency, maybe prioritizing values that we rather would not prioritize, but we do anyway, and then we learn from it and we talk about it. That's a lot of what we talk about in our Patreon episodes. So if you want to, you can pop over there and check out some really interesting, more vulnerable examples that we're only willing to talk about when it's a little more private. And I also think they're quite relatable too. So pop over there if you want to really see an example from start to finish and the learnings that someone else has gotten to. It might help you do a little bit of self-coaching to figure out your version of that example and where you land in that area. What a cool conversation. Thanks to Dr. Kennedy and Tim Ferriss for putting that out there for us to chew on.
Agreed. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah, and to Corrine to flagging it for us. I think it might be fun to do this again because people do talk about values a lot, and we usually have some things that we want to say and add to the conversation. So maybe more to come. We want you to feel like you have value support whenever you need it. That's why we've created a membership program through Patreon. And for as little as $5 a month, you can get exclusive access to the juiciest podcast episodes with topics that are too salacious or vulnerable to share publicly, as well as priority access to us in the form of conflict and communication advice. Click the link in the show notes for more details. We hope to see you there.